Hello, everybody. This is Joe Morrison with the 49th State Angel Fund, coming to you on 49 SAF Pod, the very special, unique, dedicated podcast of the 49th State Angel Fund. So first, a little bit about why we're doing this, what the 49 SAF is, what's the fund itself, and who's our first interview with. So why we're doing this. You know, it's important for our organization to do some outreach and to do some marketing. And we know that right now the future of Alaska's economy is in question. We know that we've had a hard couple of years up here. And we think it's important to talk about innovation in our community and the people who are doing new and unique things and the people who are supporting those new and unique things. So twice a month, what we're going to do is we're going to put a podcast out. Sometimes we'll talk to the support personnel who fund projects and make things happen. That's what we have today. We have Adam Krynicki of the Alaska Small Business Development Center in an interview. And he's going to talk about the Alaska Seed Fund, which is this really neat program that basically took $50,000 from the National Science Foundation and put it out to a variety of different, very small businesses that are trying to gain traction with initial projects. And to be fair to investors, those are the kinds of things that investors just can't invest in because they're not proven out yet. So small amounts of capital really help with that kind of thing. As for what's happening at the 49th State Angel Fund and what that animal is, the 49th State Angel Fund is a $13.2 million venture capital function operating out of the City Hall of Anchorage, Alaska. And I run it. I ran it from 2012 to 2014, took a couple years off, and the current administration decided they wanted a little more help with it, so I came back, and I'm excited about that. Where we are is that we've obligated nearly all that capital that we had to invest. There's about $40,000 that's unobligated at this moment. And I actually think that that's an interesting opportunity for a small business out there because that might be an opportunity where if a small business said, you know, we want to support innovation in our community and we're willing to match that $40,000 with $40,000 of our own to put out small amounts of capital to companies, that might be something that our fund would look at. So reach out if that sounds like you and you have $40,000 you'd like to spend on that kind of marketing. But anyway, our first interview is with Adam Krynicki. We've known each other for several years, since probably 2013, 2014, and a lot of interesting things came out in this interview. Didn't know Adam was a software coder. I've known him for years. Adam did a great job running and building the Alaska Seed Fund. And at about 5 minutes in, we start talking about some interesting companies in Alaska and some of the winners. And about 8 minutes in, Adam provides his perspective on how to win these kinds of competitions. So if you're a small business, you might find that interesting. Let's listen to Adam Krynicki. Thanks for tuning in to 49 SAF Pod, guys. So I usually start off by saying pretty low tech, huh? Right? You comfortable? You good?
Pretty close to the mic over here. We're good.
Okay, as long as you're close to the mic. So Adam Krynicki of the Small Business Development Center up in Fairbanks, I think. Is that what you do?
That's correct.
Okay. What's your favorite for-profit business and why?
So my favorite for-profit business is GitHub. The reason is that GitHub is great at building collaborative tools for programmers for around the world, and it's a great place for me to get programs, software for other things that I'm trying to do with my teams. And so I can rapidly deploy new software products with my entrepreneur teams that I work with on a regular basis.
GitHub. Yeah, I really don't know what it is. I always see that there's like a application to put your GitHub profile somewhere. What does that mean?
So you can basically have your own programmer profile that details what activity you've done on any type of software project. And then you can upload your software projects and share them around the world under open source licenses, proprietary licenses. It's just a massive storage repository for software, kind of like a Wikipedia, but for software.
And you're a lawyer and you don't code as far as I know. So why do you like this?
Well, I code on the side whenever I get the chance. Usually it's while, after my kid goes to bed on a Saturday night and I'm watching really, really bad movies.
Oh, I didn't know that you were a coder. Okay, interesting. This is the 49 SAF pod. Everyone, hope you're well. Joe Morrison, fund manager of the 49th State Angel Fund. I'm here with Adam Krynicki. Adam, tell us a little more about yourself, what you do up in Fairbanks, and your portfolio of work.
So my background is that I originally started in microfinance, and I'd worked for a small organization in Charlotte, North Carolina, helping entrepreneurs get small loans. Eventually, I ventured out into the world of technology transfer and helping technologists try to commercialize their intellectual property. And eventually, I connected the two, helping people finance early stage technology projects through my new job here at the Alaska Small Business Development Center. And so my big goal through everything that I do is to take technology, take entrepreneurs, take financing, put them together, and build really, really cool, neat companies.
And so you're doing that. How does that connect to what's called the Alaska Seed Fund? I don't understand. So tell me what the Alaska Seed Fund is, and where did it come from, and what does it do?
So the Alaska Seed Fund was born out of an NSF grant, the National Science Foundation, for $50,000. And that was awarded through the EPSCoR program, which is a research program through the University of Alaska, to my program so that I could help early stage entrepreneurs access money for prototyping and proof of concept work. So the shortest summary I can give is that we give funding for people to turn their inventions into something that actually could be a new product that then can be sold to people from Alaska.
So how much was the initial award for creating the Alaska Seed Fund?
It was, when it comes to venture capital or angel capital, is a pretty small amount. Is a $50,000 grant.
Well, let's talk about what you did with that $50,000. So you got a $50,000 grant, and when did you guys receive the grant?
So we received the grant last September, last October or so, and we met as a small group of folks between Launch Alaska, the UAF Office of Intellectual Property and Commercialization, the Alaska Small Business Development Center, and UA EPSCoR to try to figure out the best way to deploy these funds. And so as of November, we created a program rubric by which we would grade applicants based on their proposed business plan. What are you going to do with this money if you won a $20,000 prize? What are you going to do with this money if you won a $3,000 prize? And then we graded those as of January, and we're now deploying the funds in February.
Do you remember how many applicants you had?
We had 71 applicants, but 74 tried to apply, but just missed the application date.
Okay, so 71 applicants, and let's talk about the awards. So you had $50,000, 71 applicants, probably from throughout the state of Alaska?
Throughout the state and rural communities and the three major hubs.
Okay, and those major hubs are what, Anchorage, Juneau, and Fairbanks?
Yes.
Okay, so $50,000, what happens to it?
So the top prize goes to the $20,000 grand prize winner, and then we are going to deploy small amounts of capital, $3,000, to the remaining 9 folks that we were selected for funds.
Okay, so can you tell us who won and who's good and what you liked?
So the grand prize winner was a company that was deploying, that will be basically selling an online virtual caregiver for people that are recovering from surgery. And so that company will be using things like algorithms, machine learning to keep people out of the hospital, whereas they would be readmitted to the hospital and have to incur high medical costs. So let's say somebody breaks a hip, goes home. How do we keep them out of the hospital and from having to spend more money? Well, this app can help teach people how to stay out of the hospital. It can also help avoid Medicare compliance issues.
Okay, that sounds good. Name of the company, can you disclose it?
That's Cognitive Doc.
Cognitive Doc. I think they're based out of Anchorage.
That's correct. And then we had a couple of other ones. We have Attently, which is a public speaking piece of software that teaches you where you're losing your audience. It actually monitors the audience and can tell you who's engaged, who's not, what's the emotional sentiment, and also it can help you improve your public speaking patterns. Why is this important? Well, imagine if pollsters could use this for political elections. Imagine if the media could use this to gauge actual engagement, and that we could determine who's paying attention and not. Right now, that I know that the team is experimenting with it up at UAF in the communications department, and they have it running in several classes already. There's another company named Activate Alaska that is they're basically creating water filters from Alaska birch trees versus the way that they're currently made, which is with coconut. But coconut occurs in tropical zones. They're very hard to get to, very hard to ship, even harder to ship than Alaska birch. And with as many felled trees that we have as a result of forest fires, we're basically taking that waste stream and turning it into money.
Interesting. So, I guess one of the questions I have is, you did this process from September to January. You looked at 71 different startup businesses throughout the state. You're providing no strings funding to them. What did you discover in the process? What was interesting to you as you developed and deployed the Alaska Seed Fund?
There's just some amazing applicants. That's the first thing we discovered, is that the top quarter of applicants included things like microgrids. It included things like sports equipment. There's one called Pinga. There's one called the Mini Shinny, which does sports equipment for people playing hockey. The other cool things that we learned is that we learned something about the judges and something about the judging of these types of grants. And what we realized is that if you have a strong problem statement and a strong solution statement, it will bump you up for the rest of your scoring almost immediately. If you have a weak problem statement and a weak solution, then it will drag you down for the rest of your scoring. So what we realized is that the scoring was almost bimodal based on the first couple answers. And so we went back through and we corrected those because we wanted to make sure that we were consistent across our scoring. But people have very strong biases. And so what I would encourage is that if you are applying for our funding, other government funding, angel funding, really nail those two things, your problem and your solution. Otherwise, people aren't going to listen to you.
Well, that's really interesting. And when I was in B school, which was not 1,000 years ago, but long enough, problem solution was something that we always really focused on. And, over time, as I've done work in this area, sometimes a software business for an HR workflow is just a software business for an HR workflow, and you aren't really making that impact. But what you're saying is you still need to really rely on the problem solution dichotomy to make a powerful statement that says, hey, we're different, we're unique, and we need to be listened to. Is that right?
That's right. And that you're selling a product that actually solves the problem. Many people will drone on for several paragraphs about their solution and the features, but what we're really looking for is the benefit that solves the problem. And that can be described in 3 sentences, 1 sentence, or it could be one of those things that people never get to as part of their 8-paragraph description. And so it really comes down to making a succinct statement of your problem and solution.
So the 2 things you found out, problem solution, if you're going out for funding, really nail problem solution well. And the other thing that you noticed was Alaska's talent. You seem to find a lot of it. What stood out to you in terms of the talent that you saw?
Well, the first thing I noticed is that we need more money because there'd be easily probably 20 projects that would be fundable. We had 25 that were honorable mention as part of our application process. It's just that there's only so much money that we could give out as part of the seed fund, and we wanted to have some type of impact with that money. That said, we realized that these companies are everywhere. They're not just concentrated in Fairbanks, Juneau, and Anchorage and any one prime location. It comes down to the problems that are being solved in each region. So whereas one company might be solving microgrid issues for rural development, another one might be solving everyday backyard things for contract processing and HR. Some people are solving problems like how to cover wellheads on the North Slope more efficiently and make the basically make the shelters more efficiently. So there's lots of different things that people are doing across the state, and they really solve real problems. And that's the difference between us and probably Silicon Valley, is that whereas people are making apps in Silicon Valley and mobile things, we're trying to solve a lot of real world problems. I don't think that we had one game submission as part of the entire seed fund.
That's really funny. The only other podcast I've recorded so far is with one of Alaska's few independent game developers. So it's apt that you don't have any video game submissions. Do you think that there is a talent issue or a lack of talent in Alaska? Entrepreneurial talent?
There's a lack of connected talent, and that's the issue. So whereas some teams are very financially savvy and others are entrepreneurially savvy and sales savvy, so still others are technologically savvy. What we lack is the connection between all three and the alignment between all three to make good teams go forward. And so what that causes me to realize is that we need better ways of connecting the people with mentors that supplement those weaknesses and with other folks within the team that supplement those weaknesses. Otherwise, a lot of these teams are going to struggle, at least for the next couple of years.
But you don't think that there's any quality barrier, lack of quality in local Alaska entrepreneurs, or you do? I mean, some fund managers that I work with say the entrepreneurs up here just aren't good enough. And some say, well, I see the same things in Alaska that I would see in Southern California. I see the same ideas. So what's your take?
My take is that we have some amazing talent in that we're actually more pragmatic than most of the entrepreneurs that I've worked with in other places. We try to solve problems that actually matter because people have encountered them in their everyday job. The talent issue is, we don't have a whole lot of Harvard grads or Yale grads, but I don't think we need to. I think we need people that are willing to go out there and solve those problems with STEM degrees as well as business degrees. And I think we have plenty of that here in Alaska.
So what's next for the Alaska Seed Fund? What's your next step?
Well, the next step is to ensure that it becomes sustainable. What we'd like to see is that there would be perhaps focused on different sectors, such as energy, or maybe one for contracting and finance, one for human resources, whatever it might be, one for gaming. But in order to do that, we're going to need to seek corporate and strategic funders, as well as go back to our original funding source and continue to develop that. So what we might do is have our original funding source and then a few kicker prizes based on industries, and then bring in those industry partners to help us do the judging.
And where can we find out more about the Alaska Seed Fund?
At alaskaseedfund.com. So alaskaseedfund.com, one word. And we have more information up there. Otherwise, you can go to the Alaska Small Business Development Center website.
And so it sounds like this year, September, you get the grant. March, you're pumping out the money, right? That's a really impressive timeline for a government program. That's very quick, and it takes a while to do any kind of financing. I know that you guys aren't requiring a return, I believe, correct?
No return,
right.
But we would like to see results, if that makes sense.
Sure. So are the teams obligated to tell you anything about what they did with their money?
They'll give a short overview and report at the end of a 9-month period.
So talk about why you made it so simple.
Because entrepreneurs have better things to do than worrying about very, very small amounts of capital. They have to get to the next step. What we needed this fund to be is a clearinghouse for ideas, for people to get those ideas out and get them funded quickly so that they can move on to better sources of funding, whether that's small business innovation research grants, whether that's angel funding, whether that's going through any number of accelerators like the Launch Alaska Accelerator here in Alaska. We needed something that we could set up quickly so that people can get the money, do their prototyping, and get to the real money. And that's what the hope is.
And the hope is that you're going to run a program next year, but there's no guarantee, right?
There's never any guarantee on these funds. but we're hoping that we can. And for small amounts of money, $3,000 grants, I think that we could at least run a few small rounds for our entrepreneurs here in Alaska.
Okay, that's it. Adam Krynicki with the Alaska Seed Fund and the Alaska Small Business Development Center, based out of the balmy city of Fairbanks, Alaska, where temperatures get nigh as temperate as 58 below from time to time in the month of Fairbanks. Any final thoughts for the listeners?
Well, Fairbanks is a dry cold, so it's actually not that bad.
Okay, that's it for 49 SAF Pod. Thanks for listening. This is the 49th State Angel Fund podcast coming to you from the 8th floor of City Hall, where every now and then too much John Cougar Mellencamp escapes from my office and makes its way down to the mayor's desk. Anyway, thanks for listening. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.